Bom dia, pessoal. A gente está começando mais uma sessão do Seminário Internacional Arte, Educação e Democracia. Meu nome é Márcio Aquiles, eu sou coordenador de projetos internacionais da SP Escola de Teatro, que é realizadora do evento ao lado da Associação dos Artistas Amigos da Praça e da MT Escola de Teatro. Hoje é o último dia do nosso seminário, que tem sido bem bacana, com várias mesas, debates e pocket shows todo fim de tarde. Então, teremos ainda hoje uma sessão à 1h e a última às 3 da tarde. Então, eu vou deixar vocês com o pessoal que vai falar nessa mesa super interessante, mediada pela Napo. So, people, I want to thank you again, and I wish you a very nice session. I will be watching here on YouTube. Thank you so much, and we keep in touch. Have a nice session. Napo, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Masio, and thank you so much as well to the international corporations of SP, Escola, Teatro, but also thank you so much to my peers, my colleagues here in South Africa who come from different, institutions, organizations who have agreed to engage with us, today, talking about or looking into decolonization in theater and performance. My name is Napo Masheane. I am a South African theater maker, playwright, director, producer, translator, and I've had the pleasure in the past 2 years to work with two amazing institutions, one being the one that's hosting us today, SP Escola, and of course, Stockholm University of Performing Arts in Sweden. Today, we are going to look into how we as South African practitioners, lecturers, art entrepreneurs, theater makers, how have we, within the education system that we are part of, how have we decolonized or contributed in decolonizing? I don't have a lot of answers for it. I think that's why I asked my peers to be part of this session so that we can engage and maybe agree to disagree, or maybe to have a different perspective and view when it comes to decolonization of theater and performance in South Africa. I don't want to take a lot of time because we only have an hour. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce to everyone, but they will further introduce themselves. Within the panelists, I have the amazing Warona Seane, who's a South African lecturer all the way from University of Cape Town. I also have Refiloe Lepere, who is a lecturer at University of Technology. I also have one of my good colleagues, Zolani Shangase, who is a practitioner and business owner. I also have an amazing head of UJ Arts and Culture, Pieter Jacobs. And hopefully later on, we'll be joined by Mpho Molepo, who's the founder of Alexander Arts Academy. Dumela, hi everyone.
Hello, good afternoon.
I know with this Zoom sessions, we are always so tense because you're thinking technology, you're thinking, hey, is this gonna sustain us for an hour? But also I think because I haven't seen some of you for quite a while because of the lockdown and the pandemic, it's such a good pleasure to have each and every one of you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us, Napo.
Yes. Before we get into the key thing, I think it's very important for me, for the world that is watching us, which I think I should also officially welcome everyone across the world who's joining us, or both on YouTube and all the different platforms that the SP has organized. Zolani, please tell the world who you are and what are you about in South Africa and the world.
Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to everybody in Brazil. My name is Zolani Shangase, as Napo has just introduced me. I am a young creative entrepreneur. I run a company called Molepo Entertainment. I'm a performer also myself. I studied musical theater at the University of Tshwane and technology. I did a 3-year diploma at TUT, and it was an incredible time training to be a young practitioner in the arts. I love to create art that directly contributes to the growth of the economy of South Africa. And I am fortunate enough to have a residency at the University of Johannesburg, where we get to create an incredible show that will hopefully be performed in the coming year in 2021, pandemic allowing. And with that show, we hope to interrogate and basically rewrite folklore and to see what folklore has been in the past and what it can be in the future, and how that can contribute to the creation of a new creative sector in South Africa. I hope that isn't a succinct enough introduction.
No, thank you so much. And next on the line, can I please have Refiloe? Please tell the world, Hobo Umang, and also, what have you been up to, within the theater space and education space in South Africa?
Hi, everyone. My name is Refiloe Lepere. As Napo has said, I am a lot of things. I'm a drama therapist, I'm a dramaturg, I'm a theater maker, a playwright, and a lecturer at Tshwane University of Technology. I just recently completed my PhD in performance studies. I am a theater maker, and I've just, with that, have completed a really good run of a couple of my own plays that I've done because of my PhD. So I'm trying to gather them into an anthology and working with another group of writers. So I'm really interested in writing and how we can decolonize what script writing is and how we conceptualize writing. I also do a lot of work in terms of community theater. So working with a lot of, I work with domestic workers, I work with young people in Tembisa, I work with various people. So I'm really interested in how we go back to the source. So right now, my current project is this concept of return to source. So looking at how mental illness we can have a conversation around mental illness, but at the same time going back into the communities and doing work within community and then really expanding that space. So that's me. I think I covered it.
Thank you so much, and congratulations, Refiloe. When one of our own becomes a scientist of this artistic space, like all of us, we celebrate. So congratulations on your PhD. So it means very soon I'm going to have to call you Dr. Ne?
Yeah, it's a must. It's in my head now.
Thank you so much. Pieter, as somebody who has worked with Zolani and myself and you also with your, institution and your department, we've just collaborated. Please introduce yourself to the world and just share a bit about how University of Johannesburg has also, tapped into this thing of collaborations and bringing all these artistic voices into the academic space and the theater that you are head of.
Thank you, Napo. Yes, look, in one of the most amazing spaces, I believe, where anyone could be. But before I get to arts and culture at the University of Johannesburg, I'm a playwright, an actor, a producer, and an arts manager. I've got quite extensive experience in the funding landscape in South Africa, but I have, over the past 3 years, ventured into the academic space, which is a little bit of a hybrid situation at the University of Johannesburg, because we work a lot with industry. We don't present an undergraduate course at the University of Johannesburg. So we do different kinds of things. And since I've been there, the focus for me has always been, and that's what I'm passionate about, is the development of new work. And then the development of young people, and to be working with young people and young talent. So yes, that the arts and culture, the arts and culture at the University of Johannesburg also offers opportunities for students from across the university to experience the arts on some level. And what we try to do is also to work with both of those groups to let students engage with professionals like Napo and like Zolani, because I believe that is the perfect environment that you can create for collaboration and for also mentorship between more experienced artists like Zolani and our students, but also to create an environment where authentic South African, or not only South African, but African work can be created.
Thank you so much, and I apologize. Mpho is busy calling me on the other side, which is kind of crazy with this technology. Thank you so much, Pieter. One of the most people that I respect and who I've journeyed with for so many years is you, Warona. And you and I have had a couple of conversations when it comes to even this topic at hand. But please, Warona, Seane, tell us, what have you been up to? What have, for you, decolonizing as well in terms of the education system, but within the theater space that you and I, as, one of the voices of Black women have occupied, meant for you in work, in education system, and overall as a theater maker?
Napo. Dumela Dr. Refiloe Lepere. Dumela Dr. Refiloe Lepere. Congratulations. That's not a mean feat. That's congratulations, really. I am Warona Seane. I am a theater maker, producer, manager, dramaturg, director, actor, and recently have become an academic, and I am now located in Cape Town at UCT's Center for Theater, Dance, and Performance Studies, and my focus is in the theater making stream. Because I wasn't, for the past sort of 2 years, I wasn't sure that I was remaining in Cape Town. I thought that, at the end of last year, I would be leaving. But then I got this job. So in terms of my community here, I don't have one yet, and I need to have a community in terms of focus and all of that. But my interest has been around Black women and the representation of Black and the self-representation of Black women in the world, on South African stages, and just the need to center the Black woman in our narratives, even in just our spaces, just to see and hear the voices of Black women. So that's a very strong focus for me. And later on, I suppose, when we get into talking around how we've applied it in our work, maybe I can go into it. I don't want to kind of take over now because I can go into how I've approached that this year in terms of my teaching when we get to it.
Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Warona. Thank you. I wanted just to read something to say that for me, this session also, and then I think I'd shared with my peers and my colleagues, I'm just trying to share with the world that I think when we talk about decolonization of theater or performance in South Africa, also there's so much reflections that we have to do in terms of our history, where we come from. And I'm happy that, Warona, also you've brought in the element of voices of Black women, how most of us with the work that we create or every space that we get into, we've been first of every voice. We've been first of this, first of this, first of that. But I wanted to say that it's very important for our generation as peers to interrogate and to find ways in which how each and every one of our voices and our artistic work as multi, cultural people as we are, how has it contributed in decolonizing, even in a small little way? And I hope that we can also give the world that sense. With that said, I want to throw on the table, what does decolonization imply for the discipline of theater and performance studies? What does it mean for you, Refiloe, when you think about decolonizing? What comes to mind as a theater practitioner, as a lecturer, and even within the space that you are when you interrogate with the young generation of theater makers and creatives? What does this mean, this big word that I'm still trying to, figure out myself?
Yeah, it is. It's I think also because it's been kind of like now being bantered about, which is great. I think because a lot of times people have been scared of the term itself, and especially in certain, industries, the sciences and us, even the arts, because we're like, what are we decolonizing? We're already storytelling. But for me, it has been to look at systems and traditions of how we think and frame our ways of seeing the world. So the tools that we have, the tools that I've been trained in, have been really white, male, creative tools, right? So we know how to write because Aristotle tells us drama is this, whoever tells us, those kind of concepts. But what has been a decolonial moment has to go back to me and to pull focus outside that, the tools that I've been creating with, and to find new tools old tools. Actually, it's like Atambile's work around Ukuzilanda, right? Ukuzilanda, and go back and find what are the storytelling tools that my grandmothers and my mothers were using. What are their tools what is a hero in their stories? What's the hero's journey in that engagement? What is what are those ways of telling stories for them, like song, like poetry, like you use poetry? So those kind of things. So it's about much more of a tool, a thing of really breaking myself out of myself, because I have been taught and I've learned, and I think theater is a certain way. I think theater has to happen in an environment like this, and it must have lights and it must have this. And it has been quite a heartbreaking process for me, because I break myself to remember to, it's like that moment, that trip, the Sarki Bartman moment of them fetching Usarki and bringing her back. So for me, it has been that process of having to fetch ourselves and to say, how do we then bring ourselves? Because the reality of it is that the storytelling, if you remember, colonialization comes with storytelling. Colonialization comes with ways of being. So the storytelling that we've adopted and are doing and have been teaching is very colonial, and we know that. And so it has been, what are the stories that are hidden? What are the people that have not been talked about? What are the ways, for me particularly, what are the ways of telling that story? Because a lot of the times my ways, my being was rejected in the space, and suddenly I have to bring myself back. So that has been decoloniality, and to allow my students to bring themselves, to bring their mothers, and to bring their stories, and to bring their traditions, and to bring whatever their dances, to bring them. Because before, when I was taught, if you were a dancer, you needed to change that, because it's not what we do, movement. We do movement, we don't do dance, right? So I've had to allow for their beings to exist, and to say it's okay for your being to exist in the space. How else, where do we go further?
Thank you. I like it when you say that, especially when you use the metaphor of Sarki Bartman. And funny enough, it means myself, you and Warona, at some point we've had interaction through our artistic work to either do a play or to devise a play that has to do with this Hottentot Venus, who was, this human zoo in 1800 and in somewhere in Europe, but also how by us having her bones back has allowed us to reclaim certain parts of ourselves. So I think that's very profound. Pieter, one of the interactions I had with you during the lockdown was how the University of Johannesburg was able to put on this amazing series of workshops with different voices and different artistic creatives who were giving different workshops, from playwriting to demotic language to different approaches of theater. And what impressed me with that particular series of workshop, it was that not only did it cater for the whole world, but the people who were conducting those workshops were so diverse in their background of education. Do you want to also just to tap into that why was it important for UJ Arts and Culture to bring that kind of a workshop and approach it the way it did? Was it also, would you agree that it has also to do with the contribution that your department at the university is trying to do when it comes to decolonizing the industry?
Absolutely, Napo. That series of masterclasses was part of our UJ playwriting laboratory, which we've launched just after the lockdown started. It was always something that we wanted to do, but we weren't planning to do it quite so quickly. But you know, when the lockdown was announced, everything completely changed, and we looked at what is possible to continue remotely, and that was one of the things that we've done. And if so, we've accepted 12 writers, playwrights into that process. And then also the master classes that you're referring to, we've presented to those playwrights, but also to the students of the Arts Academy at the University of Johannesburg. And the reason why it's important for us is, you know, the development of news story is, or development or archiving of our own stories, of African stories. To me, that is decolonization, to not program. And I mean, we're in a very, it's easy for me to say because I'm in at a university. We have a different environment than an independent producer or the major theaters, where they have to look at commercial viable products. But at the university, there's less of that pressure, but you know, we do things for other reasons, for reasons, there's purpose behind it. And the purpose behind that is decolonization, is research. And part of that for me is the development of new work, and to let South Africans develop our own stories, and for those to be options for production rather than for us to repeat the picture of Dorian Gray for the 500th time. And then something else that is very important for me in that mix, and that's just also my position as a playwright, is that I don't believe that there is one way of doing it. And that's what I like what Dr. Lepere said, is that, you know, there's different ways of doing and being things. And that's part of decolonization, to acknowledge that there are other ways, and to make space for those ways, and to what we put out in the world, for those things to not reinforce poisonous structures and things like that. And from a point of diversity for playwrights, and that's what we thought, is that we're not going to try and teach these playwrights, this is step 1 to 12 to write a play. What we wanted to do is to give them insights from lots of different people who write plays in lots of different ways. And that was really what the thinking was behind the diversity of the master classes specifically.
Thank you so much. And I think, especially in this contemporary South African setting, which goes back to also what Refiloe said, it's very important for Africans to be custodians of their own stories. We know, like, as Refiloe, you said, like, you know, our grandmothers, our mothers, we come from storytellers, and these are orators that have been part of our DNA. And I think it's very important, and I think we need to celebrate the fact that the academic space finds ways now to, and I don't know if Warona later on, when I engage with her, she will agree or give me a different perspective, but I find it so fascinating that in us giving space and a voice to new voices, we're also somehow connecting it to the original, to the beginning of, you own your story. You need to be the voice of your own African story. And it doesn't have to be within one format. It doesn't have to be one kind of like stylized kind of thing. You need to, in it, discover and reinvent it. And with that said, I want to bring you Zolani, about the musical that you did that you've been working on at UJ, which you said that hopefully it's going to come next year. That I've also had the pleasure of reading the script, and just you with the background of coming from musical theater background, why did you find within the folklore this particular story, and what did it mean for you as somebody who trained, within the musical theater, to be able to breathe life into this an old existing story, but giving it a contemporary feel that is a combination of Western theater, musical theater style, and African voice?
Thank you, Napo. I think having had the opportunity to perform both on the West End and in South Africa and lots of theatres in the UK, I've had the privilege of being on incredible big stages where, like shows like The Lion King, the narrative, the African narrative is strong, not only in Africa, but across Europe and the rest of the world. Like people want to hear our stories. And it is unfortunate to realize, having worked in this way and having worked in so many theaters, that there's not a lot of big musical theater that comes out of South Africa. The only one I can remember that really decolonizes theater is Sarafina. And since that, there hasn't been any other work that has come out that interrogates not only the spirit of the time, the zeitgeist that we find ourselves in, but also goes back to the roots. And folklore is a good beginning, I thought. And in researching the folklore Hlaganyana, we realized that there was maybe 2 writers that were known for the folklore Hlaganyana, and it is a story of the Nguni people. But you find writers like Jack Cope being registered authors of the folklore, and even, entries that date back till like the early 1800s. And you're like, whoa, okay, so the story definitely existed as part of the people. And I'm like, well, we need to rewrite that folklore in a way that addresses our contemporary state, but also looks at the very beautiful indigenous knowledge that we have as a people. Like you said, I grew up as a very traditional Zulu man, young boy, trained in very traditional Zulu ideology, and also story is a big part of where we find ourselves. And like you're saying, the grandmothers being, the matriarchs of the family and passing on stories from generation to generation. So we wanted to look at that passing on of story and what happens to the knowledge, almost like a broken telephone way, where parts of the story gets lost in translation. And we want to reclaim those stories that are lost in translation and basically give back to a new way of storytelling, and also allowing young creatives to be owners and right holders, to those stories, and also to pass them on, but also update it in a way that directly talks to us now, because a lot of, our traditional ways are outdated in a way and have to, change and contribute directly to a growing nation, not necessarily, keeping us in the past, but to say, okay, we own our history, but we also directly own our future. And what does that mean as young people? So we decided to write the show, and in creating and collaborating with you, Jay, it was such an incredible journey. And it is still an incredible journey to, still interrogate the music, interrogate the story, and see what are the stories that are lacking that can directly help the nation to grow.
Thank you so much. And I think also just the element of collaboration, even within this folklore story, the music in it, being somebody who has experienced it, was quite phenomenal, from dance. And again, it goes back to what we are all possibly agreeing that, way before Aristotle, this guy, man, Aristotle. Yeah, that guy. The tongue twisting thing. That theater didn't start in Greece. We also had our own theater. We had our own stories, and maybe perhaps it's in us decolonizing that we need to reclaim and own. And it's very quite sad. I think you saw our eyes when you were telling us, people who own a folklore story that is part of a community is somebody that is not even part of this community or hasn't even lived the kind of our lives. But in so saying, Warona, I want to know, and I want you to elaborate more on how in your practice in working with these young voices at University of Cape Town, what are the various insights? I know, is it last year when you did Sanki Bakman? Please correct me. And it was just fascinating how you were working with young people doing this work. And like I said to Refiloe, it's funny how so many of us are reclaiming so many parts of Black women that, part of the show, but flipping it. So for me, in terms of your approach to the education system when it comes to theater and performance, how has works like those that you have worked with and devised and, with young people, what different experiences firstly inspired you to do it, but also what has been the current agent experience, why we should do those kind of shows when it comes to our education system in theater?
So So we didn't devise it, yeah. It was Susan Laurie Parks' Venus. So, and it's an intense play. I mean, it's really messed up. It's you know, she completely upends structure. You know, so the first scene is scene number 31. The final scene is like scene 1. You know, and she's playing with the archive. And when you're working with it, you're getting a sense that the writer herself is fighting the archive while trying to rescue the story that is also archived by the voices that abused it. So how then does she then not perpetuate the violence herself onto the woman who has been violated so much? Then we come in as the performers wanting to tell that story. And there's still that question of how are we violating her? How are we perpetuating the violence that's been on her, that's been hers? And what we were clear when we did the show last year was that we're not blind casting. So it was the graduating 4th year class, right? And that last year's class was predominantly Black. This year's class is predominantly white. But this year's class, they're doing Ways of Dying with Lara Foote. So yeah. So what we were very clear was that we're not blind casting. So the doctor, the Baron Doctor is not, we're not, just because he's being played by a Black man, we're not saying that he's playing a white man, but in having the mother showman and all those people being represented by Black bodies, it was that we were shifting the gaze. So we were casting the gaze on the gaze that was gazing upon Sarah. It was a difficult process. I'm not even sure if I was successful with the project, but we had a lot of fun, and also because it's written as a, so what was very clear for me was that I wanted to make it like a freak show, like a spectator show. So Hidden Campus has really amazing colonial former slaveholding spaces. So we opened it in the Quad where slaves were traded way back in our days, you know. And in the Quad so we had the opening scene in the Quad with the freaks in the balcony kind of speaking back to the audience and all of that. And then we drew the audience back into the theater. And then the rest of the show happened there.
Sure.
So it's about shifting the gaze. It's about reclaiming agency for her. That's what it was about. But not just her, but many of the voices and bodies that have been sort of traded and abused, and that was really very important. So also with so the theater making space is really quite flexible because you're working with people who want to be making theater, right? So they are directors and all of that. So, but the focus in the second year, because the first year is generally the African year. So everybody is focusing on, actually not even African, South Africa mainly, and then with little bits of Africa there, but the main focus is South Africa, South African work, from your Gregory Makomas, like across. So it's a Center for Theater, Dance and Performance Studies. So it's a multidisciplinary type of space. And then in second year, they have to move out of the continent and out of South Africa. And so I inherited a course called Classic Texts this year. And Classic Texts was usually, of course, Shakespeare, you know, the classics. You know.
The classics.
So but when I got it, I was like, I'm just not like, you know, like there's just other classics, you know. I maintained that the title for the course as classic text, but then what we explored was the Harlem Renaissance, negritude, and the Black arts movement. But not only just that, exploring how these movements, how the women in the movements were not regarded, but particularly with Black, with Harlem Renaissance and negritude, how they were spurred on by women, and these women are not regarded, they're not talked about. I mean, doing the research for the course, I still need to do even more, because the Nadal sisters, you can't find them. And I don't speak good enough French to be able to kind of take that and translate it into English and then make it into a, you know what I mean? Your Zora Neale Hurston is difficult to find, at least now because of Alice Walker. There's a lot more information around her and stuff like that. And they were the people who catapulted these movements. But when they talk about them, when they talk about the movements, they don't talk about these women. You know, you don't hear them, you don't hear their voices, you don't hear their plays, you don't even, I mean, even if the plays are not so great, it's still something to talk about, you know. Yeah, so I'll keep quiet now because I think I've been talking for a long time.
I like what you have highlighted, because it has been part of my struggle that as somebody who's very passionate about African theater history, which is what I'm teaching at SP, you know, Teatro, is every time I do a research, because all of us are still students of life, right? Every time I do a research and I look for simple things like who are the most famous creoles, you know, in West Africa, the papers that come up is always about the Creole, the male narrator. Every time I'm looking for, I mean, even like what we said, when we look into South African protest theater history, you know, I'm like, one is struggling, you know, Auntie Nomtlenkonyeni were there, you know, Fatima Dike was there, Mpho was there, but I mean, you find mostly extensive works and articles and essays about Matsemela Manaka, you know, Sipos Pamela, and you sort of somehow feel so not so provoked, but so heavy as a young contemporary Black voice to say, how do I write history into this history that has not celebrated some of us? And I like the comparison that you've actually made as well with Black movement, you know, in the United States, that we know about all these male playwrights that we so admire, and then you find one there African-American woman, one African-American woman, but in this, and I think I want to direct this a bit to also you, Refiloe. What are the ways of knowledge, you know, knowledge absence being visible, you know, the absence of this knowledge that we are part of, the history that we have inherited? How do we make it visible in our education system beyond our work? Yes, we can write all these essays and articles, but then how does that transcend into the classroom when you are teaching, you know, young voices presently in these institutions of learning, especially within theater and performance?
I think the first thing is, and part of to write on what Warona was saying is, if we think about historical silencing and underrepresentation of voices, either Black or women or anything like that, we shouldn't read it as a mistake, like it's just something that didn't, you know, it happened by mistake. It was purposeful, you know. I think we need to think about these things where there was choices that were made, and these choices were clear. Like, for you to be able to have power over a people, you need to change and shift their story and underrepresent what they think and dream about themselves. So once we get that right, that these things, it's not a mistake. And I think a lot of times and I teach also a course called theater history from first year to second year to third year. And the challenge that I have around theater history is that all of the history, and even the students, all they know is we have to go back to Aristotle, we have to go back to Greece. And that everyone can't seem to find a way outside of a timeline, that we can't imagine that the world is circular and there's other, you know, tributaries that are happening. We don't have to go on a timeline. And I think it's important for us to really think that it is a purposeful choice that we are forgotten and we are not written in. Therefore, once you come from that space that somebody made an effort to do that, therefore you need to make the effort. And I want to go back to the thing I started with earlier around Ubuzilanda and this fetching your life, right? That whole song that we were singing last year, Fetch Your Life. There's this fetching of ourselves, that decoloniality is Msaki's songs, that we need to fetch ourselves. It's an effort. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of, and like you're saying, it's research, but it's a lot of work. Like recently I was writing an article and I started with you, like with you saying what you are doing with your song, with your play around new song. And I went and then tried to dream of what is happening with Black women in theater. And even the reviewers who were reviewing my paper were like, no, you can't start it there. It's too, no, so those kind of fights, the fight that one has to have, even just to say, I want my history of where I sit in my work. It starts with Napo and what she's doing in new song and those kind of concepts. And for them, it's like, no, maybe perhaps you think of, take it back. So even in that, in our now creations, that they're gatekeepers in how we story ourselves. They're gatekeepers in how there's a purposeful effort towards how do you direct that story. And I think for me, the choice I've been saying is I go into the classroom and I firstly say, and I tell my students that I stand here as a Black woman, as this person, and it is not by mistake that there aren't a lot of Black women. And it is not by mistake that from first year to third year, they've been doing Aristotle. It isn't. Now they need to make choices about what they want to study. They want to continue with Aristotle, it's okay. I'm keen, we can continue with that. But this part of my story is we have to co-create together, because I don't know. So like now I've been trying to find Gibson Kenter work. So somebody gave me their little scrapbook, the book they did notes for class in Gibson Kenter's class. And that to try and create a class out of that from his voice notes is hard, but you have to do the work we must do. It is the work I have to take back to students and say, guys, it is on you. Are you going to make it happen? Are you going to do it? But of course, students struggle. They go, I want something else. Give me Shakespeare. Because also part of why we must never forget, the reality is that they want to leave the university to get jobs. They want to leave to work and whatever. And the industry and how we've shaped what we have is saying that you need to be ready for the Royal Shakespeare Court for you to be anything. So even if you're going to work in South Africa, you're never going to see UK, but you must be in such a way that you must be ready to work in the Royal Shakespeare. So our students want that. They want to be ready to go into they want to be ready to go into whatever. And so you coming and saying, her grandmother must be in the room. Their grandmother is in Tuimi. Is not going to go to Broadway. She ain't taking him anywhere. So the challenge is one has to do, but it's a negotiation. I believe in negotiation.
Yeah.
I'm clear when I walk into the room and say, I'm negotiating with you.
I love it. It's a constant negotiations. Pieter, you being at the UJ Arts and Culture, at your door, what kind of works have just come in and fascinated you and somehow contribute to also this kind of conversation? And then when I'm saying what works, I'm thinking about in terms of works that are so South Africans that deal with race, class, gender, intersectional analysis and all this kind of thing. Who knocks at your door beside me and Zolani and probably others? Who comes to your door? And if so, how then, what's the process of identifying these collaborations? Just like how Refiloe is talking about negotiations, one of the strong things that I believe in is collaborations between the practitioners and the academic space. But I want to know for you, what are kind of words that fascinate you or voices that are knocking at your door that allows you to open your door within this industry that has so many gatekeepers in it? Or have you been gatekeeping?
I sincerely hope not. Look, it's very difficult because we're not a public theater even the public theaters in South Africa is like speaking about doorkeeping or gatekeeping. There is no formal structures for any young writers to just submit your plays to theaters for them to consider the works. There's no such thing. There's a few writing competitions, etc., or writing programs. But those things are, I mean, they are very limited, and yeah. So in terms of what comes to us, the kinds of things that we do is a lot of collaborative work. So, you know, the last thing that we've done that we've had to pay licenses for was Kafka, Franz Kafka's Metamorphosis, which is, maybe I can tell you about this project that we're doing at the university. It's called the Faculty of Art, Design and Architecture Interdisciplinary Theatre Project. And from a pedagogical perspective, what we've done as a faculty is to bring all the students together. They are from 10 different departments. And what we do is we let them work together in groups to design different aspects of a production that we then produce at UJ Arts and Culture. And what we've discovered, other than the interdisciplinary skills that they develop other collaborative skills and problem-solving skills and creative thinking and those kinds of things. So historically, the university has chosen a well-known classical work for that project because, you know, there's a lot of reference material for the students to work with, and it is a trusted work. We know that it will work well because we then go on and we produce it with a professional cost. So it has to also be a good hybrid at some point because we do invest a lot of resources. So, you know, when I came and I became aware of what Zolani is planning with Madevu and Klakanyana, that just resonated with me so strongly as where I want to go with the FADA interdisciplinary project and the kinds of things that we would like to do. Because for me, it's all about context. Where I am, the Kafka that we did was very successful. We got a lot of interest from the industry. Zolani can attest to that. He saw the production. We won 2 Naledi awards for it, but that is a very difficult thing to just for our students for them to just lap up, and that's what we want. We want to create things for our students, and with Klakanyana that we are busy developing in partnership with Zolani and his team is the kind of thing that I strongly believe our students will absolutely love, and it is something that South Africa is is ready for, and we should have started developing these kinds of works long ago. So a lot of the programming happens very organically. It comes through, I mean, it wasn't a formal process where Zolani sent me an email. In fact, we met on the piazza outside the theater, and then we started talking about this project. And it's not that we don't get those projects that are just emailed to us. You know, there are always limitations to what you can do. As a division of the Faculty of Art, Design and Architecture, we have to, of course, align our strategic objectives with that of the faculty, and in a bigger sense with the university. That is what steers our programming and curation of both our performing arts program and the exhibitions program. And we seek out the things you are talking about, because that is what the university is all about Pan-African focus, about inclusivity, about decolonization. I'm also now talking a lot, Warona.
I know we can go on and on and on and on, but just moving right along and also looking at time. And I really wish one of our colleagues was here, Mpho Molepo, who started a whole institution at the Alexander Arts Academy. And for me, the fact that some of us have been in that space and seen what he's been doing, you know, and we can go on and on and on and mention so many of our peers who started, you know, theater from the ground, and some of these theaters have closed down. You know, we've seen them, you know, work hard to retain and to uphold these institutions, and to more than anything to also find alternative spaces. And with that said, Zolani, when it comes to gatekeeping, and also thinking that I wouldn't I've always known of you, Jay, Arts and Culture, but it was also through you inviting me to be part of it that I wasn't just coming in as an audience member, but I came as part of the work that you were doing within the institution, and that sort of, raised my possibilities of alternative space. What has gatekeeping meant for you as a young Black theatre maker who's also getting into producing, way away from performance space? I mean, I've known you for all these years as a performer, but to have been in a space where I witnessed you as a producer, firstly, why that shift? And is it also in you trying to change something within this gatekeeping and these institutions that sometimes we need to engage with artistically? Or what has been that experience of you that actually ended up landing you in where you are now with the work that you do, and also being a producer or an art entrepreneur?
I think it has been years of being used and abused in the industry as a performer, and also realizing that there's not a lot of work that represents me as a young Black man that I can relate with and go, okay, that I see myself in completely, and work that also offers diversity, not only in the people in the show, but also the people outside of the show, the creatives, behind the work. I realized that a lot of my peers did not have aspirations of wanting to create work. And the fact that in Johannesburg, I mean, say Joburg Theatre, for example, there's a lot of shows that come out and you're like, it's a safe choice. There's a lot of safe choices in the works that we choose because they're commercially viable. But what are the works that are directly, interrogating the world that we find ourselves in South Africa, and especially as theatre practitioners? Theatre is almost dead now. I hear rumors of producers saying, "Oh, the only way we're going to carry on now is if we have two casts of, of performers doing the same show so that we can make money." I'm like, this idea of just doing theatre to make a profit. Yes, I get. Yes, we must make money from the work that we do, but at the same time, we need to build and create more work for people to come out of university and say, okay, Ana bin Hlaganyana, as opposed to another production that has been going on for years and years and years and years and years and years. So it's important to have works that will last for a long time, but it's also important to create diversity in the workspace and diversity in theatre, not only, Black, white, but also the LGBTQI community being a big voice in society and contributing to the creative sector. So for me, it was, being able to interrogate those spaces and also directly contribute to the next project that we work on. We want an all woman-led, creative team, because we find that it is important and we want women to be at the forefront of the creation of these things, and creating a world that represents them as well as, the creatives that it's trying to protect, But yeah, for me, it was literally being in the theater for so long and not having a voice outside of the work that I had to audition for. That was the thing that made me really want to create something new and go, okay, what are the spaces that are collaborative, but also allow you as a creative freedom in finding and collaborating with new people that don't have to be the big names that we know, but people that really have authentic voices in creating, work that can also, be looked at like the Shakespeares of the world, So it's important that we collaborate a lot more than what we are.
Thank you so much. I think also just to even further to say, I think not only for Black women to champion this kind of plays or to have an all-female led thing, but I think also for Black women to position themselves historically within the theatre industry. I think that also contributes to us collectively decolonizing. We are almost done, and I know that we can, there's so much that I wanted to discuss, but because of time, I think it's very important just to get in few view, just your last words as we're about to wrap up, and then Warona, I would just want to ask in closing, and also you can put in a sense of yourself as well in this, beyond the question that I'm going to ask Warona. What are we to do to deconstruct our industry and rebuild it to, to be reflective of us? And when I say us, is the voice that is like us, the voice that speaks like us. What are, as somebody who has been in the industry, who has had so many hurdles, you and I have shared so many conversations of what we've gone through, even as, women who have led certain institutions within our country. What are we to do, or what? I don't want to say overview, but what advice would you give to the young me and you in how we can decolonize this industry? Or what will it take for the young you and me and Refiloe and everybody else in terms of Black women in decolonizing this industry?
Oh, hey, burn down the house. Because I made a little note earlier on when Pieter was talking about commercial viability, and that for me is a lie, and it's the lie that the institutions tell themselves in order not to change, not to grow, not to engage with new work that is coming out of South Africa, with all these amazing young performers, theater makers, writers that are actually making work out there. It is a falsehood, because anything, if you put enough money into marketing it and selling it, it will get you an audience. But also the people who are running these institutions are not interested in the new work that's happening. They're not interested in the alternative spaces. They don't watch things that are happening out there. They don't know what's out there. They don't know the voices of South Africa. They have no clue. And what they're busy with doing is just running their own programs, running their own shows, sharing, touring their own shows between their institutions, buying awards so that they can look like they're actually like doing something fantastic and creative. No, like honestly, like burn down the house. It's the only way. And I think also it's just too much. People need to have a time limit for how long they can run institutions. There needs to be, if we're going to put a time limit on the president, we need to put time limits on the people who are running our artistic institutions. And when they're not working, we cannot all just sit on the sidelines and be like, oh, it's not working. Oh, it's not working. Because we're not getting anywhere, and our tax money is funding these institutions. So yeah, that for me, Napo, is a serious thing. I really think commercial viability is a fallacy, and it's a fallacy also because it's based along the models of West End and Broadway. We are not West End, we are not Broadway, we are South Africa. And our needs are very different to the needs of people in England and people in the US. And we need I don't know, a department of arts and culture, and not a department of, what do they call it? A department Sports, of condolences and congratulations. Yeah, like now I'm very frustrated with the mainstream art world of South Africa, really, and it's been a frustration for a very long time. Even when I was in management at a municipal run entity, it was still a frustration. Yes. Because when there was a point when we tried with another colleague to create some sort of a collaboration with other artistic directors to say, okay, fine, we could actually just discuss our programming, and in that way then we can actually move things so that we create a tour circuit like throughout the year, and then we can all meet in Grahamstown and say, okay, this is what we did, and then strategize again about the next year and all of that. It failed, and only two of us managed to then actually just trade. Mandla, who was here in Cape Town, and myself at Soweto Theatre, then we sent shows to each other's spaces, but we didn't last in the institutions because the vision for the institutions were not what we were hired for. So people want halls instead of living theaters. People want, do you understand? So yeah, the mainstream theater space is a fallacy, and that's why they can say theater's dead. Theater's not dead. People are working. People are working and creating some amazing work out there. But it's not, but the ones who have the money are not interested.
No, totally.
Because they're killing theater, Warona. Sorry, I'm done.
Yeah. No. I definitely, I agree with you. And I think one of the things that also is outstanding with what you said is the longevity, because just the sense of, as a creative, if me and Zolani are practitioners who are not in these institutions, we come up with a new work. If I know that there's a guaranteed tour for a year for a kind of piece that I'm doing, it gives me a sense of longevity. I mean, I look at young, and I don't know if I look at this, as a lecturer myself in different universities, even here in South Africa, and again in Europe, I look at the fear in the eyes of young people who are entering the entertainment, I don't want to even call it entertainment, the theater and performance space, because we are not just here to entertain, we're here to provoke, to create, to enhance, to embody stories of ourselves as African people across the diaspora. So I want to find out, you in closing, how, and I don't know how you did it, and it might be unfair for me to even pose this question at you as a Black, female theater maker who's also in the academic space. How do we deal with politics? And what do you want to say to the young you and me who are in this industry?
I guess
in decolonizing it.
I guess the big thing, I mean, I totally agree. I think there is something about burning. I mean, we never think about a revolution. We always think about revolution in the terms of very big political stuff that happens out there, but we haven't really thought about how do we, and part of the revolution that has succeeded in most of countries has been revolutions that have, people have bled themselves out, right? So perhaps a part of what Warona is suggesting, I like the idea of burning stuff and bleeding ourselves out. But I think part of what I would say to myself, to a younger me and a younger, and to my students around, because they're also like worried with this new advent of doing digital, virtual. Everyone is just like, man, theater, I want to be the audience. And I'm just like, guys, when I was in first year, that was like 20 years ago, theater was dead. Malcolm Perky said, why are you doing this? Theater's dead. Right? So theater's been dead, all right? The point is, it's about the choices we make to choose to make it real, to make it alive. But two, to make, as we grow and as we're gonna move into, I mean, you guys have been in the positions of power, and now you've moved on. And of course, there's a new generation that's going to come into the positions of power. And I want to suggest to them and to question them is to think about, who are they appeasing? What is the active choice that they're doing to appease? And a lot of times we never, and I was saying that earlier about myself, that I have to break the white male in me, because he keeps on saying, no, that's not the story, that's not theater, that's not that. And I think it's important to say that to young people, that you need to confront your white woman, your white male in you, the teacher that taught you, and kill her and kill him, and the Black male who has taken over the theaters and told you, this is not theater, this is how theater, and this is what we do, and this is how we don't do things, this is what. They are not gonna save us, they're not gonna give us a revolution, they're not gonna change the world. And the real bleeding has to come from you. And that is to get and sit with them and say, we have to break up. And part of that breakup is death. You must die. Otherwise, I'm going to die. Because I have a lot of friends that I started first year with 50 other people. And right now, when I look in the industry, they're not there. Where are they? They're soldiers, they're call center people. They're doing other things besides the thing that they love and desired. And I think, and I wasn't the best in my class. I wasn't that. And it doesn't matter even if you're not the best, is that I believed in the work. I believed in the story. And I think the way to change everything that we're talking about in terms of just not decolonizing is to go back to self and the everyday making of self around what is it that you think, because we do it to ourselves. I am part of a collective of Writers Lab. I'm part of a collective of another theater group. And I see it. I see the young people eating each other off because it's not Shakespeare. I see them eating each other up because it doesn't look like that thing. And I'm like, guys, it doesn't matter. Do you? And the reality is we need to cut, and I am naming it, and I'm naming them that it's my Malcolm Perky in me who keeps on criticizing my own work. It's my David, and I love them, but it's those white women who taught me, who I keep going back to my own work and going, it's not it. And we need to kill them in ourselves so that we are able to take the industry forward, because that's the only way we're going to go forward, because that's the only way we're going to create outside even these spaces. We don't have to beg to be in those spaces, because then we can imagine ourselves in anew. I want to say that when we're thinking, I was reading recently the Combahira River Collective, the feminist statement around when Black women are free, then everyone will be free. And I think part of that dreaming that they were having was dreaming themselves anew in the world. And part of what I'm doing for all of us to do is to just imagine a new world. And the COVID thing kind of like tried to do that for us, but then we all went back like, oh, we want the audience. And there were 5 people already in the audience. Like, you want those 5 people? They were not coming. So we can't go back to those 5 people. Can we find other people? So that's all.
Thank you. Pieter, one of the titles that you hold is that of an arts manager. And I know for a very long time, for some of us who went to, drama schools, we were not taught arts management. You were just taught to be famous, to get into character, not even how to get out of character, just to kick, just to get in and just embody yourself with these emotions and burdens. And for me, is that in terms of, in wrapping up your view, within the arts management, how do you see that particular role contributing in decolonizing and being part of the mind's shifting kind of like, space for you as an arts manager?
Napo, I think that is like, that's just the thing, that when you are in this position, sometimes it's small things that you can do, and sometimes it's big things that you can do. And I take that responsibility very seriously, and which is why I really try to listen and to keep myself open. I've got an amazing team of mostly young women that I work with, who I try to create the freedom and the environment for them to oppose what I suggest, to say, to question what I say and what I do. And I would like, if anyone is in my position, I would like appeal to them to try and do that, because the power of collaboration is immense. And I think that what Warona's mentioned, and that led on to this little silo thing that's happening in South Africa, and people, that there is huge resistance to working together, and I don't get it. And that's my one thing. That's the one thing, is because I absolutely love that. As a playwright myself, I've never been precious about my work. I realize that up to a point it is my work, but a play is never only your work unless it is only read. If it is going onto stage, it's no more yours only. It is a collaboration, and that's how I see our program at the UJ Arts and Culture. And I'm driven by collaboration and really the vision of creating new things. And I think that is underscores where I am. And I sincerely hope that when there are people, whether they are male or female, and regardless of race, because that sometimes doesn't even matter, that they are not a gatekeeper. And we see that all the time. We see, sometimes women in power not giving other women a gap, and all of those things, it happens all around. So I think it's a societal thing, and that's what makes art so powerful, because we can talk about that. in very interesting ways. And I'm going to leave it there also. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, when you're talking about women in power who don't open the door or leave the door open for others, it's another session, because then it's so layered in itself. Zolani, in closing, what's your dream? I know we're talking about decolonization in terms of theater and performance space, but you as a young producer, as a young storyteller who is, in this vacuum, what is your dream? What do you aspire? What do you want to say to? I don't want to say I'm an elder, but I'm older. What do you want? What do you want in this theater space and industry for your voice and the collective voice of your peers? What do you want, and what do you want to say to us in closing?
I think what I want to say is we need to create more spaces where arts mentorship happens with the older generation and the younger generation, where we can share in the knowledge that we have, because part of decolonization is sharing and passing on of knowledge. So the people that have been doing this for longer than we have, guide us, teach us the ways in which we can create and uphold these, institutions that can be voices of change in society, but also allow spaces where more young creators want to be producers and not just performers. Yes, it's great to perform and I love to perform, but I'm seeing that I'm transitioning into something more than just being a performer, which is a custodian of wanting art to belong to everybody that experiences art, and we need to take the art that we do. I mean, I wish my family could, travel with me when I go overseas and travel for work. I wish I could take everybody to see the world, and then to realize that actually we have it good here in South Africa, because part of that journey has been seeing all these amazing shows overseas and going, but actually I've seen better shows at home, and I've seen better performers at home. And so it's taking it back and realizing that we can create our own Broadway. Then, why can't we have collaborations that are like what Broadway and West End has, where it's a one-on-one? If one artist from the States is in London, then one artist from London is in the States. We can do that with Brazil. We can do it with so many other countries where we can create equity for young people, and people owning rights, performers owning their performance rights for shows that they help create. I want us to be able to share in those rights as well. So the work I create will be a shared equity, I hope, with the creators that I work with, and also just passing on the knowledge to other young people is obviously paramount for me. So please collaborate with us, then we can create further collaborations with other people in the future.
I wouldn't have said it better. And to everyone who is out there and listening to this session or going to view it later on, South Africa is a melting pot of culture, of diversity, of politics. But as all my peers and my colleagues here have said, that we are very gifted people and we have an abundance of stories that need to be told. And just in reflection as I close, I know that we've spoken about burning, let us burn. And I suppose it goes to killing. We need to kill certain parts of ourselves to reconstruct and to rebuild. We know what Fees Must Fall did. We know how the lot of university students in Cape Town had to put the Statue of Rhodes down. So sometimes we have to destroy in order to collectively rebuild and to identify with being revolutionaries and people who contribute to the evolution of this industry. I also heard a lot about reclaiming. We need to reclaim ourselves. We need to bring parts of ourselves back to ourselves, but also own those parts. I heard a lot about collaboration, and also in closing, I also heard about the most difficult conversation that sometimes creatives we want to have, which is economic value when it comes to our work. And this is where I would like this session to end, and to thank my panelists. I can't wait for more collaborations, for more talks. Please, let's holla, let's keep in touch. Thank you so much, Warona, Seane. Thank you immensely for your views, for your mindset, and just for the work that you do. Also, thank you so much to Dr. Lepere. You don't understand how this means for all of us. We're so excited. We have one of our own who has become and contributed to the science of theater and performance. Thank you so much for always being amazing and powerful. Pieter, I see you. I know a lot of what you said is what you live and what you aspire in terms of collaboration. And thank you for keeping that door against all odds open for some of us. I appreciate you. And Zolani, you and I, you know, we've got so much to take in and to share with the world. And to everyone across the world, you can find all of us on social media, and just, if you know, our names are here. Google us, we are Googleable. Get in touch with us. We are open for collaborations and to the SP Escola, the Teatro, the team behind Masheane, everyone technically, thank you so much for making this possible for us, but also for allowing South Africans to share their views, because we are deep and very intelligent and creative and loud people who are all about, African stories and African theater history. So get hold of us, and thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.